one of these things that he talks a lot about is, some of the problems with the party and then some of the radicals, right? Like we've kind of hit on that point. The radicals were steering the party and specifically how Hitler thought about the world. These crazy guys in the party were pushing Hitler more into the side of the extreme and kind of taking him away from reality. One of these guys was Alfred Rosenberg. Hanfstaengl makes it very clear that he hates Rosenberg. Because Rosenberg, well, he's an interesting fellow. I'm just going to read you a short paragraph from this memoir, and I think it gives you a really good idea of the kind of person Alfred Rosenberg was. Quote, Rosenberg was such an unappetizing fellow. He had only recently married, but his colleagues on the paper recounted innumerable stories about his unsavory love life, which usually involved multiple intercourse with half a dozen men and women companions at a time in some grubby backstreet flat. It must have been the Tartar in him. In dress, he had the taste of a costermonger's donkey, and on this occasion, I remember very well, he was wearing a violet shirt with a scarlet tie, with a brown waistcoat and blue suit. He had some theory about it being a waste of money to wash shirts, and used to throw them away when they became unwearable, even by his standards. That is such... I'll tell you, I found this paragraph here hilarious the first time I read it. And then I read it again. I thought a little bit more about it. What a vermin this guy was, this Rosenberg. I mean, how disgusting of a human being. And I realized I don't know very much about him either, as an individual. Right? You can't know everything about every single individual human, right? But I always just associated Rosenberg with the fact that he was half Jewish and he was one of these really big proponents of anti-Semitism. Lo and behold, there's quite a couple other nasty things about him. And now, like I mentioned earlier, Rosenberg was one of the craziest people in the party. And his claim to fame was the whole Nordic race theory. And that was this pseudo-scientific idea, because it was not based on science. This pseudo-scientific idea that the Nordic race, right, the Vikings, the Northern Germanic peoples, they are the true superior race, and they're better, and they're smarter on average and stronger on average, and all these kinds of things, right? Our civilization is the most advanced. We've always been conquerors. Now, this is not just a very European-centric way of viewing the world, but it's just completely wrong, right? Anyone who studies history honestly can look back and say, it's not one race or one people group that dominates at any given time. I remember, I don't know where I read this, but I really loved it, so I'm going to use it here. There was this idea that there is a flame of civilization and innovation, and it gets passed around, right? It doesn't stay with one people group, and in some places, you get something like the Roman Empire. They had that flame for a long time, but the flame went out. Go somewhere else. The Romans, for whatever reason, they just couldn't keep kindling the fire, and it just moves on. And this has just always been the way history has happened. So, I think that people during this time, or like during the World War II era, I understand why they could think something as crazy as this. Because when you read older histories and whatnot, it is very abstract. But with this whole Nordic race theory, it only really stands the test of time if you measure all of human history in like the last couple hundred years, right? Maybe the last 200 years. That's about it. I think Hanfstaengl really took issue with a theory like this, because, anyone that is not drunk on the Kool-Aid of Nazism can kind of see it for what it is. It is a lunatic conspiracy theory that, it's pretty nuts. And there's a lot that Hanfstaengl says about Rosenberg, a whole lot. I've just taken out the really good bits. So there was one point when Hanfstaengl was trying to get Rosenberg out of the party. He's trying to say to Hitler, listen man, kick this guy out. He's bad news. He's crazy. All these kinds of things. And then he showed Hitler an article that Rosenberg had written. It had 14 grammatical errors. And of course, the article was about his whole Nordic race theory. The Germans are the master race, stuff along those lines. And then Hitler responded to Hanfstaengl and said that this might be influential philosophy in 50 years. It is so crazy how your own little ideology and being inside of an echo chamber like this can really warp your perception of reality and philosophy. I mean, yeah, 50 years, people might really believe this stuff. No, they don't. I'm from the future. They don't believe it. They debunked it. And then Hanfstaengl responded to Hitler, this whole, it could be influential philosophy one day. And he says this, quote, if you fold a piece of paper over an ink blot, no one is going to mistake it in 50 years for a Rembrandt. Rosenberg is a dangerous and stupid man, and the sooner you get rid of him, the better. He really pushed quite a few times to get rid of this Rosenberg guy. It's just too bad, because I really, really wonder what would have happened if there weren't these radicals inside this Nazi party. What if Hitler, instead of being influenced by the nutjobs in the party, actually did something better with it, right? I mean, of course it was kind of far right from the beginning, and you just can't deny that. But it didn't have to continue in that direction. There didn't have to be the party purges and all the other, the Holocaust, all the crazy things that went on, because these people, their philosophy and the way they thought and viewed the world was just not connected with reality in any way. What would have happened if they weren't that crazy? Big what if, big missed opportunity there.